Movie camera inside the world's biggest and toughest prison for gangs, El Salvador, CECOT. The prison that shocked the world. Imagine a prison built not to rehabilitate, but to contain hell itself, a fortress where the world's most feared gang members live shoulder to shoulder, locked behind concrete designed to crush rebellion and hope alike. Welcome to CECOT, the world's toughest mega-prison. When El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele announced the construction of a terrorism confinement center in 2022, the world barely believed him. He promised a facility so massive, so secure, that no gang member could ever escape, or even dream of fighting back. According to official figures and press statements, the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, CECOT, was built in record time as part of the government's brutal crackdown on MS-13 and Barrio 18, two of Latin America's most violent gangs. Located deep in Tecoluca, in the department of San Vicente, CECOT covers over 166 hectares, a city of concrete walls, guard towers, and electrified fences stretching as far as the eye can see. Local journalists who visited under state escort described it as a prison within a mountain, cut off from the outside world and guarded by soldiers armed like a frontline battalion. The war that built it. Before CECOT existed, El Salvador was gripped by a war in its streets. For years, MS-13 and Barrio 18 terrorized the country, extorting local businesses, recruiting children, and turning neighborhoods into invisible borders. According to El Salvador's National Civil Police, murders in 2015 averaged over 18 a day, one of the highest rates in the world. The gangs weren't just a criminal problem, they were a parallel power structure. In 2022, a weekend of unprecedented bloodshed, 87 murders in just 72 hours, triggered a national emergency. The Bukele government responded with what it called a state of exception, suspending certain constitutional rights to arrest suspects en masse. Over the following months, more than 70,000 people were detained, according to official records. CECOT was built to house them. Inside the walls. The first images of CECOT, released by the government in February 2023, went viral around the world. Thousands of bare-chested inmates, their heads shaved and their bodies covered in tattoos of MS-13 and Barrio 18 insignias, were seen shuffling in chains, crouching on the floor of the new mega-prison. The video was edited like a state production, military music and cold, commanding shots, sending a clear message: El Salvador was taking back control. Official reports claim that CECOT was designed to hold up to 40,000 inmates, making it the largest prison in the world by population capacity. Each cell holds around 100 men, sleeping in rows of metal bunks stacked 3 high. There are no mattresses, no personal belongings, no contact with the outside world. According to official statements, inmates receive 2 meals a day and are denied any access to phones or internet. Communication is the root of crime, the president declared in a press conference. Engineering fear. Every inch of CECOT is engineered for control. According to technical documents released by the Ministry of Public Works, the facility includes 19 guard towers, reinforced cell blocks, and a ring of perimeter fences wired with high-voltage current. A single central command room monitors hundreds of surveillance feeds, thermal cameras, and motion sensors. Prison officers work in shifts of 6 hours and are forbidden from using personal devices. Each guard must pass through multiple biometric checkpoints and metal detectors. Even they are not permitted to carry firearms inside the cell blocks, a precaution against gangs overpowering them. Outside, however, the army stands ready with armored vehicles and automatic rifles. The prison's architecture reflects its purpose: eliminate visibility, minimize communication, and crush hierarchy. Unlike traditional facilities where gangs can organize by block or cell, CECOT's layout randomizes placement, breaking the power of the shot callers. But critics argue this has also obliterated any possibility of rehabilitation. A kingdom of silence. No calls, no visits, no letters. According to Human Rights Watch and local media reports, family members often go weeks or months without knowing if their loved ones are alive. The state has acknowledged that many arrests occurred on suspicion alone: a tattoo, a neighborhood, a past friendship. Bukele supporters call it necessary justice. Opponents call it collective punishment. In press interviews, officials insist that CECOT is human but firm, citing the decrease in homicides across El Salvador, the lowest in decades. According to government data, killings dropped by over 90% between 2019 and 2024. But independent observers warn that such figures omit extrajudicial deaths and unreported cases inside the prison system. Life on the inside. Reports from released detainees and former guards paint a bleak picture. Inmates wake before sunrise to metal doors slamming open, hands behind their heads. They spend nearly 23 hours a day locked in cells, allowed out only for brief exercises under armed watch. There are no education programs, no jobs, no rehabilitation initiatives. According to state policy, the goal is containment, not reform. Prison authorities boast that CECOT operates with zero contact between inmates and the outside world. Food arrives through sealed slots. Even toilet facilities are built into the cells to prevent movement. One official, quoted in local news, described it as a machine that runs itself. For many inmates, that machine is their life sentence, even if they were never convicted in court. The global reaction. The images of CECOT divided the world. In the US and Europe, commentators called it both a model of discipline and a monument to fear. Human rights groups filed formal complaints, arguing that El Salvador was violating international treaties against cruel and inhuman punishment. But in El Salvador itself, many citizens cheered. For the first time in decades, they said, they could walk their streets at night without fear. Foreign media from Reuters to the BBC covered the prison's opening, noting its unprecedented scale and the political symbolism behind it. Bukele used social media to showcase CECOT as a proof of his tough stance on crime, while critics called it a theater of control. The debate wasn't just about gangs, it was about power, image, and the limits of state authority. Beneath the surface, rumors emerged about conditions inside, beatings, sleep deprivation, and medical neglect. None of these could be independently verified at first, as press access was strictly controlled. According to investigative reports from El Faro, El Salvador's leading independent newspaper, even public defenders struggled to reach their clients inside CECOT. The government denied abuse allegations, claiming strict discipline is not mistreatment. But as the months passed, leaked photos and anonymous testimonies hinted at a different story, one of constant surveillance and psychological breakdown. Former inmates said the silence was the worst part. You don't hear people screaming, one man told a foreign reporter. You hear nothing. And that's how you start to lose yourself. According to psychologists, long-term isolation and sensory deprivation can lead to hallucinations, anxiety, and irreversible mental damage, conditions previously documented in supermax facilities like ADX Florence in the United States. The numbers behind the walls. CECOT's sheer scale is unmatched. It boasts 8 cell modules, each capable of holding 5,000 inmates. There are industrial kitchens, laundry units, and a forensic area for internal investigations. The power grid has its own backup plant, making it self-sufficient in case of a national blackout. But for the inmates, it's a different story, no light beyond the fluorescent buzz of their cell, no sound beyond orders barked by guards. International security analysts compare CECOT to a warehouse for humans. They argue that mass detention on such a scale might stabilize streets temporarily but risks creating a generation of men broken by isolation and rage. Some experts fear that if ever released, these inmates could emerge more violent than before. According to reports by the International Crisis Group, the current approach eliminates immediate threats but plants seeds for future ones. A new order. Bukele's government frames CECOT as part of a larger vision, the New El Salvador. Billboards across San Salvador show smiling families and slogans like, "Now we live in peace." Tourism is rising, foreign investment is flowing in, and the president's approval rating soars above 85%. But behind those numbers lies a question few dare to ask: what is the price of peace when freedom is its currency? Inside CECOT, no one is rehabilitated. No one is educated. They are simply contained, a solution that many argue cannot last forever. According to a UN human rights report, mass incarceration without due process creates an illusion of safety that may collapse when the pressure is too great. For now, the illusion holds. Echoes in the dark. As night falls over the mountains of Ticoluca, CECOT glows like a fortress of light. Searchlights sweep the perimeter, and from the distance, it resembles a military base more than a prison. Inside, the inmates lie awake, listening to the buzz of the lamps and the clack of boots in the hall. Some pray, some plot, some stare into nothing. There are no mirrors in CECOT, no reflections, no reminders of the person they once were. One guard, speaking anonymously to a local newspaper, summed it up. This isn't a prison. It's a message. A message to every gang member in El Salvador: the war is over. The state won. Or at least, that's what they want you to believe. The silent war inside. When the world first saw the videos from CECOT, it looked like the end of gang rule in El Salvador. Men who once terrorized cities now crouched in chains, stripped of power and pride. But inside those concrete walls, a new kind of battle had just begun, one fought without guns, without knives, without sound. It was a war of endurance. The system of control. According to official blueprints and security briefings, CECOT operates under a principle called total encierro, total confinement. Every movement, every meal, every breath is monitored. Inmates have no human contact beyond guards shouting orders. Even guards are forbidden from knowing prisoners' names, only numbers. Each cell is equipped with cameras and motion detectors. Guards watch from a control room built like an air traffic tower, dozens of screens showing hundreds of men, each one another pixel in a living grid. The objective is absolute discipline. In the words of one government official quoted by El Diario de Hoy, if you remove identity, you remove rebellion. In CECOT, rebellion is impossible. Or so they believed. The lost identities. Months after the first transfers, the effects began to show. According to human rights observers who reviewed anonymous testimonies, inmates stopped speaking altogether. Many forgot the sound of their own voices. One guard described it as a dormitory of ghosts. Medical reports, where accessible, indicated growing cases of malnutrition, infections, and untreated psychological breakdowns. But in official briefings, none of these appeared. The government's message remained unwavering. The streets were safe, the prison secure, and the operation a success. Yet silence has a way of speaking louder than words. When lawyers and families began to demand proof of life for detainees, the government responded that no one leaves until El Salvador is cleansed. Inside the human machine. CECOT's regime runs on precision. Every morning, the loudspeakers echo through the corridors at dawn. Prisoners rise, hands clasped behind their heads. No talking. No noise. A conveyor of soldiers and guards deliver food, beans, rice, tortillas, measured by calorie, not compassion. Lights stay on day and night to erase the sense of time. Sleep deprivation becomes a tool of obedience. According to a former military contractor who spoke under anonymity to La Prensa Grafica, it's like running a psychological experiment on 40,000 people. You don't need whips when the walls themselves break them. A government of shadows. While CECOT functioned in silence, the Bukele administration broadcasted it as a success story. In international press conferences, he stood before giant screens showing drone footage of the facility, row after row of steel and concrete, symbols of control. He called it the end of the gangs, and for millions of Salvadorans, it felt true. Extortion dropped. Murders plummeted. Tourism returned. But opposition lawmakers and global organizations like Amnesty International warned that the same system that defeated gangs could one day be used against political dissent. Today it's gang members, one analyst wrote in the Washington Post. Tomorrow, it could be anyone who disagrees. Bukele dismissed critics as foreign hypocrites, reminding the world that for decades, El Salvador's poor had lived under fear created by those same gangs. For most citizens, the argument was enough. Order, even at a cost, was better than chaos. Echoes from the cells. Leaked letters, smuggled through sympathetic guards, according to El Faro's investigation, told a darker story. One read, "We no longer know what day it is. We don't dream anymore. We just wait." Another claimed that fights had broken out over scraps of food and air vents, though these reports remain unverified. Guards reported no such incidents. Officially, there were 0 violent events recorded in CECOT since its opening. But survivors from previous prisons, now freed after wrongful arrests, say otherwise. They describe hearing screams in the distance, sounds of metal doors slamming at night, and the rhythmic hum of generators that never stop. "It's not a prison," one said. "It's a tomb where people are still breathing." The numbers game. As of 2025, El Salvador's government reports over 80,000 total arrests under the state of exception. Around 7,000 have been released due to lack of evidence, but tens of thousands remain uncharged. Human rights groups estimate that at least 150 deaths have occurred in custody, though official statements confirm only a fraction of that number, attributing them to natural causes. Forensic experts who reviewed some of the returned bodies, according to AP News, described bruises, ligature marks, and signs of malnutrition. The government has not responded to individual cases, stating that no abuse has been confirmed. But the pattern is too large to ignore. Inside CECOT, life is measured not in years, but in endurance. No trials. No updates. Just the same gray walls, the same air, the same silence. The propaganda of order. Outside the walls, a new image of El Salvador took shape. Tourist billboards showed beaches, smiling families, and slogans like, El Salvador, Land of Freedom. On social media, Bukele reposted videos of foreign influencers praising the safest country in Latin America. Meanwhile, journalists who questioned the narrative faced harassment and surveillance. El Faro, the country's most prominent investigative outlet, was forced to relocate part of its staff abroad after facing what they described as systematic digital espionage. The government denied targeting the press, calling them paid activists. But the message was clear: control extended beyond CECOT's walls. Families without answers. In a small neighborhood outside San Salvador, a mother named Teresa, a pseudonym, waits by her phone every night. Her son, 19, was taken in April 2023. She hasn't heard a word since. She visits the local courthouse weekly, carrying a folder of documents, hoping for a name, a number, a confirmation. According to her, the police told her, he's in CECOT. That's all you need to know. Teresa's story is echoed by thousands. Across El Salvador, families line up outside detention centers with photographs and ID cards. Many never receive a response. For them, the war on gangs has become a war on memory, a slow erasure of faces that once filled their homes. Yet, paradoxically, some of these same families once lived in terror of those gangs. They too say, we lost our sons, but we gained peace. International shockwaves. The CECOT model didn't stay confined to El Salvador. Across Latin America, politicians in Honduras, Ecuador, and the Dominican Republic began citing it as inspiration for their own anti-gang strategies. Bukele's approach, dubbed Bukelismo, spread like a doctrine of control, efficient, ruthless, and unapologetically authoritarian. According to The Economist, several right-wing leaders in Europe privately praised the results, even if they couldn't replicate the methods. But human rights observers warned that the normalization of mass incarceration under emergency laws risked setting a precedent, a world where security becomes the excuse for silence. The unseen cost. Behind the statistics lies a moral dilemma. If a country's peace depends on invisible suffering, is it truly peace, or just quiet oppression? Psychologists who studied similar high-security systems, like ADX Florence and La Santé in France, note that dehumanization breeds long-term instability. When inmates are treated as numbers, not people, they don't disappear, they evolve in silence, carrying trauma that spills back into society. According to reports from former Salvadoran officials, some in government privately admit that the system is unsustainable, but politically, it cannot be undone. Releasing thousands of untried prisoners would risk both chaos and backlash. So, the silence continues. A fortress in the fog. At night, from a distance, CECOT's floodlights pierce the mist like a spaceship landed in the jungle. The hum of generators, the glint of metal fences, the rhythmic patrol of boots, it's a self-contained world. For the guards, it's a job of monotony and fear. For the inmates, a sentence beyond time. Every day looks the same. Every week disappears. Every thought becomes static. One anonymous officer summarized it for Reuters. We keep them alive, but we don't let them live. And that may be the purest definition of CECOT's success, or its tragedy. The final question. El Salvador's transformation is undeniable. The murder rate has fallen from one of the world's highest to one of its lowest. The gangs that once ruled the streets have vanished, their leaders chained inside the mega-prison. But at what cost? CECOT stands as a monument to control, a fortress born from fear, sustained by silence, and glorified by power. History may one day call it a triumph of order, or a warning from the future. Because when the state learns to silence its enemies so completely, who will stop it when it turns that silence on everyone else? Scales disclaimer. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. All factual references are based on public records, official statements, and credible investigations from 2022 to 2025, including Reuters, BBC, El Faro, and Human Rights Watch.